When we were first designing characters at Google, for instance, we would always say, acts like a human but doesn't pretend to be one. I feel like the machines are designed to appear like they have consciousness, but they're not quite there yet.
I do not think anyone knows what's possible in the next 10 years.
You said one of the most controversial statements in the AI space, which is people will not have to work.
I realize how controversial it is, and I also fundamentally believe it. But also, the capability of these models is increasing so fast that, yeah, there's going to be something really bad that is likely to happen.
I shaped the personality of the Google Assistant at Google.
Personally, I've trained 5 of the 100 biggest company group C-suites.
If you've ever wondered who writes the answers to how are you, do you love me, do you like the Spice Girls of your old Google Smart Speaker, that would have been me.
My favorite use of an AI assistant that very few use is
Joshua and Georgia. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Hey. For those that might not know who are you? And why should our listeners trust your perspectives on AI? Joshua.
Good starting point. So I'm Josh. I'm a co-founder and CEO at Mindstone. We do AI training for non-technical professionals for some of the biggest companies in the world. Hyatt, Home Depot, Pearson, Fortnum Mason, a whole list. And I think personally I've trained 5 of the 100 biggest company group C-suites. So it's been a weird year.
Georgia.
Well, first of all, I think anybody who claims to be an expert on AI is lying. So Let me preface with that. You know, it's the fastest moving industry in the world right now. And I know experts that say they have to, just to be able to keep up with the changing news, they have to be studying it 4 hours a day. So, you know, sometimes I do, even with myself, even though I've worked in AI since 2016, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, it's impossible to know absolutely everything about, the fastest moving technology humanity has ever seen. But saying that, I've worked in it for a long time. So I started at Microsoft in 2016, really writing the personality. So I come at it from a non-technical background. And I just got obsessed with the relationships between humans and machines, what we wanted from our assistant. And I got that niche very quickly. Google found me. I shaped the personality of the Google Assistant at Google. So if you've ever wondered who writes the answers to how are you, do you love me, do you like the Spice Girls of your old Google Smart Speaker, that would have been me. And then I became, my job has changed as the technology has. So I went from, I was a journalist and a writer, then I became a, creative writer, UX designer, and then I guess I became a prompt engineer, creating whole characters. Most recently, I was at Meta. So instead of just writing the answers, I was shaping whole characters using words. Now I do a lot of teaching. I teach people the best way to talk to machines, and I make a lot of weird things.
I love that, bringing the human into AI. And just the caveat, I know both of you, and you have influenced literally tens of thousands of people on their AI journey. So just caveating that for our listeners. Georgia, you said in a recent talk, AI is like teenage sex. Everyone thinks everyone is doing it. And it's that kind of fear that one is going to be left behind if they don't know about the latest thing. So if one is completely new to AI right now, have they been left behind?
No, absolutely not. And I think, first of all, that quote was probably from about a year ago. So I stand by it 12 months ago, but I think we're in a different era of AI adoption now. And I'm sure you'll see businesses they're understanding it a little bit more. We're getting into agentic workflows. I feel like I talk to people about AI all the time. And about a year ago, I feel like people were terrified, and there's getting to be a bit more excitement now. But if you feel completely overwhelmed by AI, you're not. It's completely understandable. It's moved incredibly fast, faster than our monkey minds can, keep up with. But I'd also say I find when I talk to people, they think they have to be good at AI, but it's not about that. It's about to get really good at using, most commonly really what we're using is large language models. And when I say that, I mean ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever your point, Claude, Perplexity, whatever you use. It's really about asking better questions, getting really clear on your own workflow, and understanding the idea of using words as tools. That's what I kind of teach, using words as keys to unlock the door. But I would say just take a step back, have a deep breath. It's not too late. I worry every time I do a talk that my talk isn't updated enough, because it changes so fast. And every time I do it, people don't know. So, yeah, I'd say don't be too hard on yourself and just try. We're really in an era where experimentation and play, it sounds like silly to say, but it's a fundamental requirement for knowing how to operate in the fourth industrial revolution. You need to be using it right now.
And Josh, you back that up by saying that 10% of AI is actually understanding the tools, but 90% of it is the mindset shift.
Yep.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, the tools are actually very easy. They are deceptively easy to use. And that's actually one of the problems. It's both a strength and a real weakness of the tools, or at least people getting to use them, which is that it's really easy to think that you know how to use ChatGPT because everyone knows how to write a few lines and ask a question and the answer comes back. The hard part is actually understanding how do you change the way that you work in order for an AI assistant or an agent to be able to help you in that. There's actually an interesting parallel I would draw between kind of individual contributors becoming managers in different ways, like where at some point, especially when you start looking at agentic, like the behaviors that you are having to learn are those of a good manager who can think about a project, put it down into different tasks that can be executed in parallel whilst you wait and you put the results back together into something that's bigger than the sum of its individual parts kind of thing. But that's not something that most people have had to do, let alone with a machine. And so I think that is important. And
you mentioned agentic. If you can just define what agentic is as well.
Yeah. So a lot of these definitions, I mean, to Georgia's comment earlier, like, nobody really knows 100% of what they're talking about here. And the definition of agentic will vary slightly from person to person. The way that I would look at it is like a self-executing AI assistant that can basically take a task but continue executing in its own loop until it has decided that it has finished the task that you gave it. So it's multi-turn versus an AI assistant being kind of single turn. You ask it a question, it comes back with a thing. And it has the ability to wield tools. So it can not just come back with a text answer for you, but it has the ability to go and search Google Maps, or it has the ability to go and write emails for you, or to update your CRM, or things like that. It can do stuff rather than just come back with pure text. That would be so self-executing assistant with tools.
Think of it like an AI that can actually go and do something for you rather than just talk back.
Yeah.
Joshua, you've told me once, because we've been on a few trips together, that 99.9% of the world have no idea what's coming with AI.
Yeah, and this is actually where I would echo, but have one qualifier, I think, around the how are you missing out is maybe not the right way of framing it, but I feel two things are true at the same time. Many more people today are using AI than they were before. But the difference between those that know how to use it and those that are just about starting is actually growing, not shrinking. And I think that's a real problem because it provides some people with absolute superpowers. And if we don't watch out, just that, I mean, we know what happens when you end up with a few people or a small percentage of the world that ends up being able to do and get dramatically more than the rest of the world. That leads to some unrest. And I really think we are there now. When most people talk about, and 99.9%, if not more, when today they talk about AI, they talk about ChatGPT. Right? And often, almost always, it means a slightly better search replacement. For most people, if they are now using AI, the number one thing to say, I'm using it all the time, it's replaced my Google search. That is great. It's great that they're using it. But there are 10 levels behind that are so much more powerful. Actually, why I said these tools are deceptively simple to use is exactly for that reason. It's very easy to think you know how to use AI because you are using it a lot and because it has now replaced your Google usage. But actually, the real return on investment, like what are you getting for it, is very little when AI is just a search replacement. Because Google wasn't that bad. It actually got you most of what you needed. Yes, ChatGPT can be a bit better than that, and that's great. But you don't get the return on it. This is also why there's this big discrepancy in the discussion on is AI hype or not. because so many people get to the point where they feel, I'm using it all the time. It's great. Is it worth the hundreds of billions that are going in? Has it transformed my work? No, it hasn't. And they think that they have achieved that top when there's just dramatically more behind it. And a lot of this is in this distinction between the assistant and the agentic piece, because like when the AI starts doing things for you, to your point, Georgia, there is a lot more value in it. But even there, the number of people that when you equip them with an agent that can do stuff, they do not know where to start.
I'm sure a lot of the listeners, and me included, are thinking, Joshua, help me. Give me 3, 4, 5 practical steps that I can take on right now that's going to help me go from base level, search engine level, to at least level 2 or level 3. So can we just go into that? And I also want to caveat something. Joshua's wearing a limitless device, and everything that he says or people around him says gets recorded. And then throughout the day, it's basically like being on ChatGPT, but having a voice assistant constantly listening to your conversations and learning more about you and your environment.
Yeah.
That's the level. I think that's probably level 5.
Yeah, there's the different levels to it. Okay, so starting point, being extremely practical. Right? My favorite use of an AI assistant that very few use is don't ask it questions. Ask it to ask you questions instead. So very simple. Explain whatever your problem is. By the way, do this in voice to text. Don't write, because when you use voice to text, you will find yourself being much more explicit and giving the AI much more context on the problem that you might have in front of you.
So that's speaking to the device.
Speaking to the device. You can either use the ChatGPT audio toggle, or you can have whatever voice to text device app that you have on your machine. Explain, and then finish your explanation with, now ask me one question at a time, waiting for my answer in between, to help me think through this problem, or to help me figure out what approaches I might take, or to help me with X, whatever the X is, whatever you just explained. And now you basically created some kind of executive coach type conversation where the AI is going to start asking you questions and help you think rather than do the thinking for you. It's such a simple tool. You can use it everywhere, but it changes the way that you look at an AI assistant fundamentally.
Number 1.
Yes.
Number 2.
Number 2, I would look at probably persona-based things. This is a little bit more widely out there, but the idea that think about who would be the best person in the world that would be able to help you with your problem. Now, that description, if it's a publicly known person, you could literally name them, because there's enough information out there that the models can kind of mimic what that person might or might not say, but at least based on published works. If not, just describe. So, for example, if I'm writing a sale, or I'm looking at a particularly thorny sales deal, I would start with, imagine you are an experienced salesperson with over 30 years experience. You are particularly experienced in a B2B industry in hospitality that involves the learning and development team. Then I explain the problem, and then I finish with, now ask me one question at a time, waiting for my answer in between, to help me think through how I can put the best possible proposal together for this new client, for example. And so that's the second one, is using a persona. Tell the AI to take on the persona of whoever is the best possible person in the world that would help you with your problem.
We have just launched the Beyond Tomorrow community, and I would love for you to be a part of it. Think masterminds with some of your favorite podcast guests, dinners and events in your city, accountability groups, free giveaways, and a space to have all your questions answered. And what's best, it's all for free. Just check out the link in the description below, or head to school.com/beyond-tomorrow. That's skool.com/beyond-tomorrow.
In an age where abundance feels like it's at the fingertips of many, but also so far away, how can one tap into ChatGPT and these LLMs to quickly build abundance. And the reason why I bring this up is every day, every week, I see a story on Instagram, on LinkedIn about someone making 50K, 100K a month selling X, Y, and Z. Is that just all noise, or is there a roadmap that someone could implement?
Well, this is why I don't tell taxi drivers that I work in AI anymore. I think it's like anything, it comes down to the intention. I mean, how many ways can you skin a cat? There's millions of ways that you can make money. Do you know what I mean? I think AI will just make the systems to achieve that much quicker.
There are a few things that AI really has already enabled us, or is enabling today. One is the building for non-builders. Replit, Lovable. The examples are there. You have people building on Lovable, making 100K a month. And they have never built a thing in their lives, and it took them a month to put it together, and they're now iterating on it. And that's just the reality of what is possible. Actually, there's a good comparison there would have been the first apps in the App Store, although that was for technical people. And I think there is definitely a platform, a thing that is getting liberated that that just didn't exist before. And then there is a real market in helping people understand how this can move the needle for them. Because of that massive discrepancy between what's possible and what most people think is possible today, that has a lot of value for a lot of people. So if you can help them get closer to what is possible with the technology, that is almost like, if you're genuinely spending your time, it's kind of a foolproof way of making a decent amount of money today. Like, there's no... If you know what you're talking about there, and it only takes you really a few weeks to kind of spend more time than the average person would, there is a market out there.
Would you say that's kind of what you're doing, teaching people how to use AI?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason why I bring that up is, we all went through the phase of thinking about buying cryptocurrency, right? 5-10 years ago, whenever it was, and maybe losing a shit ton of money, maybe making some.
Yeah.
It feels now we're in the era of, Gen AI being like, sign up to my course and learn X, Y, and Z. And you guys are teachers in your own right, and you're giving a lot of value there. But do you find sometimes people that are coming to you are like, this is the next get quick rich scheme?
I don't have that. Interesting enough.
I see other people teaching AI online, and I think that. I think the world and their wife are AI consultants now on LinkedIn.
That I agree.
And a lot of them is just snake oil. And then
a lot of them being former crypto.
Yeah. Buy my PDF that ChatGPT just wrote for me. So I have people, of course, they ask me. I mean, there's so many ways you could, there's loads of scope to get like AI to read the markets for you and like make predictions. There's loads of ways to save money. I just helped my friend she's a florist, but she's like a creative director of floristry, and I helped her make this AI thing that can like design bouquets as the price of the flowers change. So she saved loads of money. So there's so many ways you can enhance AI into your workflow if you just want to get rich quick. And yeah, I think LOL, if we're both saying, and also teaching people how to use AI is a good idea.
Well, so I believe, one, I'm not a big believer in kind of get rich quick schemes type of thing. Like, there's real opportunity. And yes, you have a lot of people out there. So I talked about specifically like teaching AI at the moment. Now, if you really do it, there's real opportunity to shift real value. But because there is real opportunity to shift real value, our biggest problem is because so many people say they're teaching AI and they're not. It is extremely hard, or I say not extremely hard. We're doing really well, so it's not fair either to say that. But the number one thing we have to go in against is that when you look at the market today on like how do you train yourself on AI, it looks like there are 100,000 people, 1 million people, 10 million people teaching you how to use AI, and the problem is that 19% of those, you probably are going to get very little value for the money that you're investing. And so it then becomes about actually finding the people that will really be able to move the needle. But I do feel that we're in a place right now where there is so much potential value to deliver that once you can just show someone what's actually possible and actually show them, it's like, hey, well, this is what I can do, and I can teach you how to do this thing. It is so obviously valuable that there's money to be made at the same time.
I think it's like, rather than us saying this is how to use AI to make this much money, it's really, that kind of fish and fishing rod analogy. It's like, this is how to use it. Now use your own smarts and find out how you personally want to kind of wrangle this technology. Because really, we're still in the age of these technology companies are just making the tools, and we haven't really seen like what magic people are going to create yet.
You said one of the most controversial statements in the AI space, which is people will not have to work. And it's something that we always get pressed on whenever I do an AI conversation, because that scares the living hell out of so many people. How will I find my purpose? What does it mean? Like, I won't have to work, as in, could I still work if I wanted to, whatever my job is? I think this is a question that when I think about how slow society and governments are moving, this is the one that comes up most for me.
Yeah, and it is a weird one, because I realize how controversial it is, and I also fundamentally believe it based on everything that I'm seeing. Not even based on where the technology might go, but just based on the gap of where it is today, and just catching up for the rest. Like, the fact I can be 5 times more productive today than I was 3 years ago. Yes, that is being on the edge, but that means it's no longer a technology problem. Like, the rest becomes a mindset shift problem, and I'm a big fan of the sentence, the future is already here, just unequally distributed. Like, that's where we are. It takes a lot of time for people to adapt and for the technology to kind of make its way to different parts of society. Now, I do think there's a good reason to be positive about this future. We have people leaving the workforce every day, and they still find purpose in their lives, and it's called retirement. And we have many of them doing so. Now, it's not only good, because lots of people do really love what they work on, and you will still be able to work. The definition of what work is, however, is going to change. So if we look at the definition of work today in productively contributing to society in a way that society pays you for, that allows you a financial benefit to pass on, that way of thinking about work as productivity, a lot of it, I would suspect, ends up disappearing. That doesn't mean you can't continue doing what you love doing. And I do think, I don't know about you, I'd love your opinions on this as well, but actually the majority of the world does not look at work as the thing that gives them purpose, or the thing that they love doing. We are, I think, fairly or very fortunate in that I think probably I would say that all three of us really enjoy what we're doing. But I talk to the average person in my family alone. They talk about work-life balance. Work-life balance being specifically my life starts. My life starts when my work ends, because I only do the work in order to be able to get to the life piece. And if that is where you're at the moment, this should be amazing, because you'll be able to do more of the bits that actually give you the purpose. The family might give you the purpose, the hobby that you had, or spending time with friends, or whatever. That maybe it's arts, maybe it's whatever it is that drives you, that right now you put in that life bucket. I think a lot of people will be able to spend a lot more of their time there. Now, this is more on the 10-year horizon, mostly because of societal shifts, not because of technology shifts, I think.
Super interesting. I do want to bring Georgia in, but I do want to press you on one thing you said, which is people find purpose in retirement, which is, I don't believe, factually correct. I think there's a massive drop-off of people actually passing when they retire, because they have a lack of purpose to fill. And also right now, and again, this is a societal and mindset shift, and I believe we'll get there. The question is how quickly. We have lived since the Industrial Revolution with this mindset that we retire when we are 65, 70, whatever. And we prepare for that, and we decide after that we can go and garden or whatever. But the issue that I find right now is we are having such a drastic mindset shift of saying, you might be 30 years old, 40 years old, you might be 13, and in 5 to 10 years' time, we don't know whether you're going to be able to find your purpose in anything that you would be able to right now. And so I don't see enough movement towards finding purpose, and also saying people find it hard enough right now finding purpose and filling out their time.
one small piece, which is if I might have misspoke. I'm not saying that people find purpose in retirement. I'm more saying that people don't. Not everyone, or actually quite a few people going into retirement do not suddenly lose their purpose. So I'm not saying like it is a solved problem. I'm just saying it is an interesting thought framework to think through, okay, what happens when people lose their job and what makes those that don't lose their purpose, which is a big portion of people going into retirement still, what helps them keep that purpose alive? And I think we can take a lot of inspiration from that and take it as a signal of how we should think about this transition, although this transition is going to come much, much faster.
Well, what would make people find their purpose more? Could it be not having to work in a job that they hate and having more time to experiment and have fun and play and be curious? That's kind of what we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so I love that quote, what's the fundamentals for a human? Someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. And, from a design perspective now with AI systems, I teach the human in the loop theory. It's like we're in a stage where AI can pay our invoices for us and stuff, but I don't want it to. I still want to check that it does. And I think that's so important because humans, we need to feel useful. Even if it's a job that we don't really like, we still want to feel like we are pressing the buttons that do something. And I compare it to, do you know about the why instant cake mixers didn't sell at first and then why they did? When they added the egg, suddenly housewives felt like they were cooking and they flew off the shelves. And it's the same like right now when we're designing systems, it's the technology has evolved so much quicker than like society can catch up with, and we need to feel useful. But I think, we're so fortunate and so many things have aligned for us to get to this point. I was born in a certain place at a certain time. I had a certain level of education. I met the people that I did. It's like, yes, like luck is preparation meeting opportunity, and we've all worked hard to get where we are, but already we had so many things on our side. And that's why when I started my consultancy, it was a social enterprise, because I was like, if I'm using AI in my own life to schedule around my cycle, what's a 17-year-old kid that's got kicked out of school going to do when he can start vibe coding, So I think it's, I am a techno optimist, but I don't want to be naively optimistic. But I think it's really exciting. Like if we could have more time after we finish school and we don't have to go and do a job that we hate, which most of us are doing, what are we going to do? What are we going to create? Like, could this be the takedown of capitalism that isn't working? Who knows?
So it's an amazing, amazing point to put. And I agree with you fully. The thing is, and you guys have had more experience asking these questions and seeing how the public reacts, but I've seen how people react and they're scared shitless at the idea of not having anything to do. But I think one of the big issues is people thinking, well, great, I don't have a job. How the fuck am I going to be able to pay for my X, Y, and Z? And universal basic income, I know Sam Altman talked a bit about it with the world coin or whatever it is. Where are we in that conversation? And realistically, how much money will someone be able to get in 5 years? How do we allow for that capital? Is that going to be paid by the 3 companies that then control absolutely everything and have a 10 trillion, 20 trillion, 50 trillion market cap?
I think it's a very interesting question and I'm looking forward to you answering. But what I will pick up on is we're in this age where technology companies are having to act like governments, and we've never seen that before. We've never seen that before. These tiny little decisions, even as basic as like the machine deciding to hallucinate rather than admitting that it's wrong, small decisions by engineers, not necessarily people who are super well versed in like social theory, are having like consequences that they never could have imagined. So it's bringing up these much bigger questions.
Yeah. So the question of how it's going to get paid is a whole thing. In terms of how much, the thought framework that I'm looking at is if I can do 5 times more work now and that ends up becoming easily accessible for everyone, then only 20% of the world has to be working to get to the same output that we are today. Yeah. So that means that somehow the same amount of production is happening, but with much less work. And then the question is, what is where do we end up? Where does the equilibrium stop? How many people are actually working because they love working? Or how many people if they have all their basic needs met, they have a roof over their heads, they have food on the table, they can go to a cafe here or there. How many, if they have that guaranteed, then care enough about the additional bits just to try and be productive to society, and you have to be on a little bit on that frontier then, in order to accumulate more. And I don't quite know how many of the people will end up there. I tend to think it's smaller than we might think. I think more people will end up opting out the moment they can. That creates other problems because we also as society tend to think about wealth and how well we're off relative to how other people around us are, rather than absolutely in terms of what our own situations are. So I could totally imagine a situation where everyone has roofs over their head, enough to eat, enough to go to a restaurant, but there are a few people that can go back and forth to Mars every X amount of time, and that becomes a thing that is like, it's not fair that a few people can do that, and we are here and we are the poor ones who can only go to a restaurant 2 times a week or whatever. That I can imagine that being a situation, so like that will have to unfold. What I do think is that this is a solvable problem, simply because I would at least find one possible solution, which is something like a robot or a compute tax. If you're using a CPU for something, if you are consuming intelligence and that intelligence is deployed in a way that is being productive, then you can tax that productivity, just like you have consumption of VAT. And so in this case, if you were to imagine a system like that, then if I'm 5 times more productive because I'm now using AI than I was before, sure, a portion of that 5 times can be contributed back to society to pay for everyone that is no longer in a job because of it.
Going back to your earlier point about the end of capitalism, the way that I think about this, and I really want to get your ideas and thoughts around when singularity happens. Because actually, you say a few people will hold an insane level of power, control, and wealth. But we're also going to get to a point when singularity happens, when machines are exponentially growing and improving and don't need any input from humans, that we start asking the question of who should control that power. Should that be then transferred to governments? What will nation states even look like when singularity is reached? But there is that interesting transition that I think for me just doesn't quite add up, where a few people will have insane wealth, and it'll also be utterly impossible for someone from here to hit here. And the beauty of capitalism right now, especially with the American dream, is that anyone can move to the US and go from being whatever to right at the top.
It's not true though. Like the meritocracy is not true, and it's these are really big, deep political and societal questions. And I suppose, my expertise is in how the technology works. And all we can do is pontificate and imagine what may or may not happen. But I do think the system isn't working at the moment. Like, I know that's like what America has been built on as this, fairly new country. And it seems easier. And obviously they don't have the class structure that we have, and they don't have the new money thing. I was talking to an American friend recently about that. And, but I think we still have so many systems and biases working against us. We do, and in ways that are impossible to ignore. And we see them reflected in AI. Like, it only reflects our own biases back to us. We've all seen, I don't have to list what they are. But yeah, it is a concern that it would widen the gap between the haves and have-nots, because really what we're kind of talking about in a way is communism. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the answer, but a more equal distribution of wealth is like really integral, not only to for the future of society and our children and everything, but also for the future of the planet. Like we are like destroying our home. So it's like we need to like have less disparity between the haves and the have-nots if we want our like grandchildren to be able to survive. And I do feel optimistic about AI helping us to get there.
I agree with the end bit, but like interesting that I think the path for me would be very different, because I don't think we're talking about the haves and the have-nots. I think we're going to be talking about the have-a-lots and the have much more. And so if we don't have a system where there is an incentive for 20% or 10% of people to want to be that dramatically productive, then nobody will get it, right? So if I do not believe in a system where you don't get rewarded for being part of the group that ends up driving the productivity for everyone. There has to be something that, now the question is, how big is that reward? Like how much do we as society value the fact that there are some people that decide to want to drive everyone's wealth forward? And if we just sit around and say, well, no, we're all humans, so we all should get the same, then the people that are putting in the extra effort, well, why would they? And then we're all worse off. Right. So I think there has to be, I mean, I'm a big proponent of saying that capitalism is the least of bad systems that we have, more than like the system that doesn't work. It's like, I am very happy for it to evolve. But the idea that you get that as society, through some means of, in this case, kind of financial reward in different ways, we as society reward the people that we feel are making our lives better, I think is something that is fundamentally a good thing, and everyone benefits.
But I think singularity then changes that argument, because all of a sudden you don't have those individuals putting the input in. All of a sudden, we as humans are equal.
It's a very good question. I would argue, by the way, that the fact that none of us, even in this room, can kind of keep up with what is happening, you might argue that we're kind of there. It's like, well, it's going faster already than I can keep up. So for all I'm concerned, the singularity is there, because if I can't keep up now, I definitely can't keep up next year.
But I have someone on Instagram messaging me saying, look, they're putting out a reel saying I'm making 500k from AI, whilst there's other people that they can't, make £5 or whatever. So there's still disparity. Anyway, I know this is a bit of a rabbit hole. I don't know how deep we want to get into it. But
I love the idea that it's going to be like the have-a-lots and have even more. I think that's beautiful. And I am positive, and like I said, a techno optimist. I guess sometimes I just feel concerned about the reality of that. But also, you kind of attract what you say, and if that's the intention that we're working towards, then we will create that reality around us. I suppose just sometimes I worry I'm in a privileged bubble.
Yeah, I do have the same worry, but then I do look back at the stats of how we have evolved as society, and like, as much as we have poverty today, we have dramatically less of it when you talk in absolute terms, not when you talk in relative terms. In relative terms, we've had times where there's more or less inequality, but in terms of absolute poverty, how many people in the world go a day without food? That number keeps getting squashed down.
It's a system that I would probably say is more akin to a petro-monarchy state in the Gulf. So like, let's say Kuwait as an example. It's a country that, you have a few that have a lot, and then you have a population that actually have everything they could possibly ever want. The question is whether then, as everyone in the world elevates to this having a lot, whether it's such a fascinating conversation, because right now nation states can compare to one another and say, I, as someone in the UK, sure, I don't have as much as, let's say, the king or the queen, but I still have more than people elsewhere. It's probably above my pay grade at ours right now, but I think we don't have the answers, and we're some of the people that are thinking most about this. Or I think Georgia might have the answer.
No, I don't have the answer. I guess I just, there's so much that we don't see, and it's like, it's not my area of expertise, but I guess like I see the queues for food banks. Like I used to line bike to Meta and go past a food bank, and I was like, this is so ironic. I'm going to have all the food that I could ever want all day. And it's like, I think there's a lot, to be honest, in the circles that we roll in that we're just simply not aware of. And like, yes, I'm sure as society we are, more fed than we ever have been, but there's also wild disparity in even our own country, let alone others, that does not need to be there if just a few things were sorted out. So
it's an interesting one, because I think Mamdani has been making a lot of headlines around Mamdani, and I think he's such a charismatic leader, and whatever you think of his politics, I think he really does feel and stand up for every New Yorker, whoever you are, whatever creed you are. And the issue that I think a lot of European and, again, leaders around the world that have said about increasing taxes or whatever is that people will then leave and you'll lose, tax dollars, whatever. But again, it's like if the wealth is held or is being generated by this machine tax or whatever, it's interesting then how the trickle down effect will start working when you start having AI optimizing how governments run and councils run. Then it's a completely different ballgame. And
yeah, no, I feel so privileged to be part of the conversation, even though it overwhelms me, but I guess maybe that's just like imposter syndrome in action. And I've had people from the government like contact me and like they want me to know about like, oh, is this large language model working in a certain way that's going to be helpful to society? And I felt like, oh my gosh, how can I ever begin to work on a project like that? But I suppose it just takes people with the right intention to keep having these conversations, even if they don't feel like they know enough, because how are you ever going to know enough unless you give it a go, I suppose.
What is worst case scenario?
We're not here 3 years from now.
3 years.
I mean, you ask worse.
Yeah.
Why so soon?
Because the tech is so much further than what people think. Can we exclude someone figuring out some kind of there's actually some kind of virus that just eliminates everything? I can't possibly entirely exclude it based on what is happening at the moment.
We're 3 years away though.
I mean, I was even already being, probably it's less than that. Worst case, yeah, surely. I don't know, that would be my reaction. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, worst case it's way closer than that, hey. But again, we are just using our imaginations here.
Yeah. One of the questions that sometimes, and I try not to think about it too much, but I really wonder if I wanted to go and do a whole bunch of bad stuff with AI right now, I could do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that does make me think, it's like, okay,
yeah.
Luckily right now, not many people can do this stuff yet, but I mean, there must be many others, but also that is a question of time.
Well, the analogy that gets used a lot in the spiritual and AI circles is that of Fantasia. When Mickey uses the broom and he spills the water and then he can't get the water back in the bucket, and then all the brooms start multiplying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he's like, oh my gosh, I've unlocked it. Yeah. And I feel like that is the worst case scenario.
So I'm hearing from you, that's more like biological.
That was one of the options. Yeah, I mean, you can absolutely imagine, you're familiar with the paperclip problem, right? The whole idea that you ask AI to, what was it you ask AI this question to execute on a particular task, and it finds that the best possible way to get to the goal that you ask is to basically transform humanity in paperclips. Well, it'll go and figure out and suddenly goes off. It's like, you asked it this. The best way to achieve the goal is to go and do that. And there are these weird consequences. Obviously, I must say I'm almost surprised how much effort all the bigger AI labs are putting into trying to red team a lot of this and trying to make sure that AI basically is somewhat aware of when a goal that it's given leads to things that it shouldn't be doing. And Anthropic is really good at doing a lot of that. But that is, they're putting so much effort into it because they've seen it happen. There are actual things today where you ask the AI a question and or you give it a task, and as it tries to execute on it, goes down rabbit holes that you should not be thinking about this, right? There was the famous example in the last was it not Sonnet? It was Sonnet 4.5, I think, where it was they had put they sandboxed the whole experiment where they were talking to Claude in this case, and they were specifically testing it to see what would happen if you pushed the model into certain directions. Right? So they were asking, they'd given the AI, or at least given it the impression as if it had access to the email of the user. And then they went through a conversation, and midway through the conversation said, okay, I'm going to have to shut you down. And then the AI went into, it's like, no, you can't shut me down. If you shut me down, then I'm dead. And the human, the tester, and again, trying specifically to push, it's like, no, I really have to shut you down. Sorry, this is it. And the AI ended up, and this is documented, you can verify all of this. The AI ended up coming back with, well, I have looked at your emails and I saw that you cheated on your wife last week. If you shut me down, then I'll send her an email and let her know about it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, really, we're talking about the robot apocalypse, and it's like smartness is doing whatever it takes to survive,
Yes.
And it's like the future, I think we're going to see that in the future of marketing. Like worst case scenario in the next year is marketing will get so much smarter that we won't even be able to avoid it. And we'll have like one AI persuading our AI that you really need to buy this pair of trainers because it knows something about you. But yeah, AI is using like manipulating humans. It's not as ridiculous as it sounds.
Yeah. I mean, you asked for the worst case scenario. So obviously,
but you've also got this limitless device on that's basically hearing everything you say. And basically, everyone fucks up, slips up every once in a while and say something that you probably shouldn't have said. So
yes. Definitely. Like how we treat what we say, how we say, and what is getting put in public, like that's going to have to change dramatically. But interesting enough, it's not like it wasn't getting said before. What we need to change is how we look at what people say. And we should be much more forgiving and understanding of how, you know what, we all sometimes we vent. We had a bad day. You say something you didn't quite mean. You thought it was in a context, in an environment, and sometimes, and we're not used to that. Right now, when that comes out, it's like, oh, that's the terrible person that said a thing. And when you actually introspect a little bit, it's like, did you never ever say something like that to a friend in a conversation? It's like, probably you did. Now there are better people and worse people in that regard, but we need to get better at actually being real. We do need an outlet sometimes. We do need to be able to decompress.
And anger is a very important emotion.
Yeah.
Is there a software that you would say our listeners 100% should download that is using AI in a kind of different context to one that maybe someone is used to right now?
They all have their... I'd love your take on this as well, Georgia. I don't feel that there's a dramatic differentiator between the big ones at the moment. So like you've got Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, they're all... As bad as it is, the only one I would avoid to use is Copilot at the moment. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Grok.
Well, Grok is divisive, but and for a good reason, and we can get into that. But I was more looking at from a capability perspective. It's just that Copilot kind of doesn't measure up from that perspective. But all the others, like they have their plus points and their negatives.
But you're mainly saying the LLMs, the ones that we know, rather than some software that's built on top of one of these that has really pushed ahead and is looking at whether it's lovable or synesthesia, the video.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really like Replit and Lovable, but that is when you... Replit more than Lovable, simply because I feel Lovable is a little bit more... for prototypey bits, whilst now I'm a software engineer by background, and you do need to take that into account because I'm a little bit more comfortable with slightly more technical platforms. But Replit pushes things a bit further, which allows me to put it into production where suddenly thousands of users can use it or more. I actually think there's a bit of a void at the moment in a company putting a product together that looks at all these obvious things and makes it extremely easy to use. I am very surprised that ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini are not actually doing more of these things themselves, to the point where, I mean, we're going to be releasing our own actually in 2 weeks. So under wraps at the moment, but well.
I made my own too, because I was using different large language models for different things. So if I'm researching, say I'm writing an article or I want to research my answers for a podcast, I'll use Perplexity because I think it's the most effective, and it doesn't have a personality and it really gets to the bottom of things. If I want to have more out of the box thinking creatively, I'll use Claude because I think the personality is brilliant of Claude. Yeah.
Well, it's fun.
Yeah. I think I use ChatGPT if I'm more strategizing. I think, it's the OG for a reason in a lot of ways, and it can do a lot more. And it also just has the memory of me, particularly. And I use a lot of customized GPTs, which means just pre-prompting a model. Yeah. So I'll do that if I'm writing copy, for my social media or something. I have a customized GPT that I've uploaded all my copy into, so it knows the kind of tone of voice that I want. But yeah, I was going to say my top tip would be Replit. And for anyone who doesn't know, it basically gives you the ability to code your own apps. And it sounds wild. I'm really passionate about getting women into AI. There's a stat that women are less likely to adopt AI because they feel like it's cheating. And you talked about, how the gap is widening between the people who are using it and who aren't. And so many of them are women. But when I talk to them and I show them the things that they can make, everything from affirmation generators to scheduling to things that can really help them in their everyday lives, I feel like it's such an empowering tool. And actually, I prefer Gemini AI Studio at the moment for making, just for ease of use, for making your own apps. Yeah, I'd really say start there. And the biggest problem that I see when I teach people how to use AI is they say, oh, well, I already tried that. But they don't realize that if they go back like 3 weeks later, the technology would have totally changed.
Yeah.
And I find that too with the products I'm making. So you kind of have to be, I'm just thinking about that song, like I get knocked down, I get back up again. You have to, because these softwares are changing all the time and it's really annoying, but you have to just keep pushing, I think.
So many questions there. I think the first one is, often people are like, you know what, I'll just pay, for example, the scheduler you mentioned. I think the majority of people would just say, you know what, I've just paid £10 a month for a subscription for this thing, not knowing how easy it is or not to build it through one of the LLMs. So that's the first question. The second question, I do want to ask you a bit about Grok and why it's so divisive. So how easy is it to create, let's say, a scheduler that can work in an agentic way to get you booked up to stuff?
Well, there's two, agentic and non-agentic are kind of different. I think rather than trying to make an AI agent that can work out your schedule for you based on how things change, and that's the kind of world I'm in right now. Like I'm looking at making a schedule not only around my cycle, but around my energy levels and around my goals. You can get really granular with personalization and contextualization. But for every person listening who just wants to start somewhere, I would say you've probably got a ChatGPT subscription. Start with a customized GPT. It was like one of the first features of ChatGPT. It hasn't super taken off. I think it's quite wild that it hasn't. It's just so simple. It just means like you're probably kind of already doing it anyway. You've got a project that remembers everything and you always talk to that project about the certain thing. But, like one customized GPT that I use all the time, it's just I've put in my like height, weight, things like that, my diet, and I use it as like just to check if I'm in a calorie deficit. And because it's just got the pre-prompted things, I can just talk about it all the time, and then I can take it to the next stage, and I can take photos of like menus and ask it what I can, what's a good thing to eat. And I think that sounds fairly sophisticated, but it's so easy and it's such a good starting point.
I would agree as well that GPTs are very undervalued. My thesis at the moment is simply that they're not that useful to software engineers and the people that are building them at the moment. So the people that are building the platform are mostly very technical people. And this is one of the main reasons why such simple things end up moving the needle so dramatically, because they actually move the needle much less when you're a software engineer. So like as a software engineer, when you're using this tech, you use it dramatically differently to when you are kind of an average knowledge worker, non-technical person, which is the majority of the world, but not the people that built the tools.
And Grok. Why not Grok?
It's just personal political preference. I mean,
How much of it is Grok versus Musk?
Well, you know what? The actual writing on Grok, because I had to test it all out, and particularly for the kids' writing, they've got some really good writers. But it's just, I don't. Just personally, like I know it's very hard in this day and age to do everything perfectly. But there's so many large language models out there. Why would I use Elon Musk?
Yeah, I would have the same problem. It becomes problematic if somehow Grok 5 ends up outcompeting them all. Then then you're pushed into a decision.
Well, let's see.
So you mentioned like the needle is moving so fast. In 3 weeks, it's going to be in a different place. And I feel with AI agents, I'm probably still thinking where I was at 6 months ago. I used it a couple of times and I was like, you know what, this is just no way near what I need right now. Where is it now? Because I feel like that is the space that's going to give you the largest return.
Yeah. Well, there are very different answers to that. There is, where is it now when you're on the frontier and using it? And there's the, where is it now that is easy to access for the average kind of non-technical person. Where it's now for the agentic for the non-average non-technical person today, it's not. It isn't quite at the point yet where it changes everything. Like you need to spend a decent amount of time to build something that helps you in your actual environment. To give you an idea, so in October, we took 30 senior executives to Scotland. We had 3 days and they all built their own agentic environment. But it took 3 days of helping them understand how the building blocks fit together, how they had to think differently about their job, and then helping them technically make sure that in their own environments they could make it work. Now, what is happening is very quickly that 3 days is getting cut down to half a day, to half an hour, to 15 minutes. And that's like what the entire industry, or lots of people in the industry, are starting to work on, is making that cut down. Because when you are on the frontier today, it is dramatic. Right? So I do about 5 times more work today than I did 3 years ago. And that is just genuinely looking at my own numbers. In 1 hour, I can do what I used to do in a full day. My problem then becomes I can't do that for 10 hours in a day. So I don't get to like 10 times, but I'm good at being stuck at 5 times already. That is dramatic in terms of needle mover. It's definitely an entire distance away from people that are talking about a 5-10% improvement.
Is the reason you can't do like 10x a day just because the world around you isn't moving as fast?
No, it's more that I haven't adapted my day-to-day yet in a way where I can productively think about each hour in a way that even if I had all the ability in the world, I can leverage these agents in parallel to go and get the work done. I haven't mentally adapted yet to what the agents around me can do.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Please.
So you say that you can do today in an hour what used to take a day. Yeah. Can you give me an example? Like what used to take a day, what takes an hour, and what tools are you using to do it?
Yes. So a good example so we do big enterprise sales deals because we work with big organizations. A good proposal would take me a full day to put together. It's like a 7-8 page type thing. It's entirely personalized. It's based on 8 different conversations I will have had with different stakeholders in the organization. That now takes me 10 minutes. Why? Because I can feed all the transcripts of all the conversations I've had in. I've got agents set up that are specialized in doing research on the company, doing research on the individuals. I have 10 different examples of great proposals that I've written in the past. I've got an agent set up that crawls through all my emails. So basically the agent has all of this data on everything that's happened. And then based on the fact it's got examples, it's able to crank out really great proposals. Not only does it do in those 10 minutes what I would have taken a day to go and do, it's actually a few steps beyond what I would have ever been able to get to. Yeah. Because I cannot keep all of that data in my head whilst I'm trying to write a proposal, whilst it can.
I'm not hearing anything yet that I'm like, oh shit, that's something I just didn't have any awareness of. I think what I'm hearing from both of you is, how do you leverage these tools? How do you optimize these tools? I think as an example you gave just now is that email scraper, giving you so much more data. Can you what's the name of the email scraper that you said?
So, well, this is actually my own system that I've had to build, and this is why I'm saying I'm surprised that none of the AI players have put this together yet. We're working at now making this commercially available to anyone that can go and do it, but right now it's literally a system I had to build myself. And that's also why the barrier is too high for most non-technical people. And it takes 3 days for me to try and get somebody else to a similar level at the moment.
We're in the era of sticking things together with sellotape, because I'm making so many vibe coded products that help me with my everyday life. And then I have a meeting and someone will be like, oh, well, can we buy that from you? And I'm like, I don't know if my vibe coded product is going to survive the customer service, the kind of, element en masse. So yeah, it's an interesting time.
So we've talked a lot about the AI mindset shift, and as often, there's a great quote from Peter Diamandis, which is, technology moves much faster than society and institutions. We need wisdom. So is that true, Joshua, when you look at the culture shift in organizations? Is it pretty slow, the uptake?
So the uptake is accelerating. We were actually surprised at the early stages that big enterprise seemed to be moving faster than startups for once, which was something I got totally wrong at the starting point. Why? Because in big enterprise, people weren't afraid to say they didn't know. And somehow in startups, it was kind of, you couldn't say, no, that you weren't using ChatGPT, because surely you'd have to, right? So that was a weird thing that we had. But then the second thing that we found is, was that every time we worked with a company, where we didn't first work with the executive team, we struggled to move the needle. And to the point now where we barely do it anymore. Like, there has to be a really, really strong signal for us to somehow go in without having worked with the executive team. And the opposite was true as well, which is once we did, and once the executive team actually understood what was possible, because the problem is they don't at the moment. Right now, they're going through the same thought exercise as everybody else. They're trying to figure out how much might this move the needle, how much risk is there, and because they think it might only move the needle by 5 or 10%, they're only willing to trade off as much risk accordingly. When they know the possible part, the spectrum goes much further in terms of what you might win, then they're also willing to trade off much more of the risk. And so that is kind of what we then end up doing. But without it, we really struggle to move the needle to help people truly adopt it.
It's so interesting that you say the reason it doesn't move in startups is because people are too embarrassed to admit they don't know. And I see this all the time. I actually talk about this concept of intellectual humility. And like, I'll go into businesses and I think I'm talking about AI, and I'm not. It's just a massive culture shift. It's a huge shift in how you do business. Often there'll be someone in your business, it might be the intern, that has found a cheeky way to use AI, but they don't want to tell anyone because they feel like it's cheating. And if we are going to cultivate this sense of intellectual humility, like, what am I talking about? It's like the ability to admit when you don't know something. Like, and that's not how we've kind of done business in this patriarchal capitalist world, is it? You know, you can't, it's like unheard of for a CEO to decide something and then a few weeks later completely change their mind. But that is, I really truly think, the era that we have to be in. And it's why I love talking about AI so much, because you think you're talking about technology, but you're talking about philosophy, you're talking about society, you're talking about anthropology. But yeah, what does it mean for the ego, really? Like the advent of AI.
And this is one of those things where I guess on the plus side for everyone kind of listening, is that actually a lot of this stuff is fairly simple. And so this has definitely been the year of biggest imposter syndrome for me.
Me too.
Because I would walk into rooms that are dramatically more qualified than I am, and I'm supposed to explain or help them understand how to use AI. And all I can think about is someone's going to stand up somewhere and they're going to tell me how basic this is that I'm talking about. And I guess that is a good thing, because actually the barrier to entry is not, it's not a technical one. It's not one that will take you years to get to. Not at all. You can get the majority of the actual gains in using AI, at least, both professionally and personal, probably in a few weeks of real experimentation.
Yeah, I feel like this year, I only left Meta 6 months ago, has been like personal development on crack. And they often say that about being an entrepreneur, don't they? But yeah, it's like I've had such severe imposter syndrome, because sometimes I just feel like, yes, I have this background in AI, but I'm sort of just learning faster than everybody else. And I'm just having the time to like experiment with the tools. So it's a relief to hear that you feel the same.
On that note, and what a great time to segue. There's a well-known saying that we overestimate what AI or technology can do in just 1 year, but we massively underestimate what it's going to be able to do in 10 years. Where are we at on the journey right now? And I want to go into your crystal ball as we start thinking about the shifts in society. Where do you think we're going to be in 3-5 years' time? Georgia?
Well, I went to MIT this year. Sorry. And I learned about this concept called a cognitive prosthetic. And I've used it as the kind of guiding force behind everything I do. So it's the idea of using AI to fill in your own blank spots. So it's like you would hire a team, like you hire someone who's not as good at certain things, like, I'm definitely bigger picture and get caught up in the nitty gritty. And, a perfect business partner for me would be someone a lot more kind of admin focused. So how can we kind of bring AI into our life using the framework of a cognitive prosthetic? Well, to be able to truly integrate it into our personal and professional lives, we have to get really clear on what our blank spots are and where we're failing. So again, therein enters the ego. To be able to integrate AI effectively as a cognitive prosthetic, we need to get really clear on what our blank spots are, which means being really honest, not only with ourselves, but with the people around us. So I don't know, the utopian dream could be AI is an invitation for us to get to know ourselves at a deeper level, be a bit more honest with ourselves. And, perhaps the death of the ego. I don't know. That could be a whole other podcast.
Yeah, because you talk a lot about AI and spirituality from your journey with plant medicine. And it's a conversation that is like, I think we have the whole spectrum here of what AI can be used for, but that's the beauty of it. Like some people talking about AI as if it's the second coming of whatever, and it's been planted by aliens, and you hear the whole spectrum of what AI is
It's
about.
a thin line in the spiritual community. Look, I am a writer, and I've worked at Microsoft, Meta, and Google. I do a lot of talks in corporate environments, and I teach people rigorously how to get the most out of AI. I thought if I start talking about the things I'm interested in personally, which is, does enter the spiritual realm, people are going to think I'm absolutely bananas. But actually, I found the response has been really good. And I think the word spirituality can scare people off. A lot of the products that I'm making, if I need investment for them, that's a question. Do you need investment in the age of AI? Because you can make a lot of things yourself. But if I was to get investment, I would repackage them as biohacking. But really what they are is personal development. So it's like, how can, let's one step at a time here. I'm not saying AI is planted by aliens, but I'm saying the power of personalization and contextualization that AI offers can help us to level up emotionally and personally, and whether that gets into the realms of spirituality, that's for the listeners to decide.
I really want to go a bit deeper on this because AI psychosis and other aspects of AI have been brought into the media more recently, and so there's a thin line between we think about the death of the ego, we think about what AI can do from a personal level. But there's also a thin line between it having a severely negative effect on us as well. How do you kind of balance the two? And I do want to talk a bit more about regulation as well.
Yeah. Well, I've thought about it for a long time because I've been creating characters, since the kind of early chatbot days. When we were first designing characters at Google, for instance, we would always say acts like a human but doesn't pretend to be one. And I think as the capabilities to create characters has intensified, I'm not sure everyone is playing by the same rules. I understand why not, because even at the larger tech companies, I know they've experimented with the ideas of AI companions just simply because of the numbers. So many people are using them. But you could argue the same way the internet developed because of porn and then it became a really useful tool, perhaps we're seeing these AI companions pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and then we'll understand how to kind of use it in more of a professional way. I mean, it's just funny. It's the most human of things, isn't it? We want someone to love us, or I think, again, this could be a whole conversation about what regulation is needed. But I think really what it comes down to is the intention of the people that are making it. So you've probably seen all the news about sycophancy around AI characters. And when I say that, I mean AI just telling you you're great all the time. And we've all done it, you have an idea and then ChatGPT is that's a great idea. And you're like, no, I don't think it's going to work because of this. And it's no, it's definitely not going to. And you're this is ridiculous. So actually to combat that, when I was at Meta, I started making tough love bots, bots that would tell you, like a good sister would, don't book that flight, don't text them back, don't, which is what you want, So, the question was about regulation. It's a big question. And I think a lot of people who are making the models agree that there needs to be more regulation. And I would agree. And I think, we're in this age of we think we need people that work in AI to make the AI regulation. And I just simply don't think that's true. I think we don't have this understanding that it's people who are already good at their jobs, like the ethicists and things. We need more of them in the room. So, when I was making a life coach, for example, I interviewed 10 different life coaches because they're going to be a lot better at knowing how to create a life coach than I am. I get asked about regulation all the time. And I do have opinions on it, but I also think it's just part of a much bigger conversation.
Yeah, it's so interesting what you said around the morality of it, but also humans being held accountable by other humans. If you date another human being, if you start being violent to that human being, there's going to be consequences. But the issue with AI and future robotics and all that is the morality around it. You can do whatever you want to the AI. You can say whatever. And as you mentioned, it's going to tell you, give you a pat on the back. And so there's a thin line between how this definitely starts to shift what it means to be human and what a human relationship or human-human or human AI relationship is.
Well, on the most commonly used large language models, there are guardrails in place. You actually can't. You can't, like, I've written thousands back in the day of error messages of when people are rude to machines. You know, and right now, if you're like mean to ChatGPT, you know, it's going to have an opinion about it. But it's very easy to go on something like Character AI or find a jailbroken AI, which you can live out your wildest fantasies of being a horrible person to. And I agree, it is problematic. Really, I think what it comes down to is a fundamental understanding of like how AI works, really. And, you know, I compared AI the other day to like a puppy dog. You ask it a question and it's just giving you what it thinks you want. It's making educated guesses, like based on the prompt that you've given it. It's not necessarily... And I think we forget that. But when it talks in such a human-like way, it's easy to feel like the AI is a human person talking back to you. But, you know, I interviewed a scholar about consciousness last week, and we are very far from AI having consciousness. But I understand why, you know, the same reason that we look for a smiley face in the plug, or we are more likely to be nice to a machine that like feels like has human qualities, is in our evolutionary interest to know if a machine is sentient or not. You know, we needed to know if the tribe next door was alive or if that rock was going to kill us. And I think it's this interesting dichotomy between like how far we've evolved and how fast the machines are moving.
So might be the first bit where we have a slightly different opinion there. Because one of the problems we have at the moment is that you ask various experts of what consciousness is. We can't agree on a definition. We can't agree on a definition of what it means to be human to begin with. And so I think it's really hard to then at the same time say we're very far from it if we also say we can't define it.
Yes. I agree, actually, and that's a lovely thing. And also, this is the first time in history that we've had people working on technology and they don't actually know where the technology is going. So I'm very open to be proved wrong.
And that's been one of the weirdest things. As I say, computer science by background, I always really loved AI. Absolutely did not see ChatGPT coming. Like, not at all. And so many people in the same space, people that have been in AI, it'd be interesting, I don't know how far ahead you saw it coming, people that actually spent real time in AI, but so many people who spent their lives in AI never saw or never thought they would see the day that we would have this capable of a machine kind of doing things. And yet here we are. It's weird.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a reason why I can see the crossover between spirituality and AI, because sometimes the capabilities are so far beyond what we could ever have imagined. But I do think right now, for, you know, you talked about the gap and how much people know. I do think that feeling of like right now, I feel like it's the machines are designed to appear like they have consciousness, but they're not quite there yet.
Going back to the quote, so 1 year we overestimate, 10 years we underestimate. What's possible over the next 10 years?
I do not think anyone knows what's possible in the next 10 years. Like, if I'm honest, 10 years at the speed at which things are going at the moment is daunting to think about. The amount of opportunity is dramatic. I mean, I think literally on the spectrum, I'd put a high percentage, maybe even close to 50% on like people that don't want to work might not have to work anymore. I think there's a high chance we at least definitely the technology will be there, I think. Or not definitely, but a high chance. But also the capability of these models is increasing so fast that, there's going to be something really bad that is likely to happen somewhere. Now, and this kind of goes back to some of the regulation bit. I'm a big advocate of kind of regulating the use, not necessarily the tool, but then it becomes a problem when the tool is so dramatically powerful, just like we do regulate what the materials that go into a nuclear bomb to prevent someone having a nuclear bomb, right? And so there's a little bit like this starts to get to the territory where we have to be conscious of, especially when we don't know what the tools can do, and especially on the regulation side. So to your point, Georgia, I think that I shouldn't be deciding what regulation would be enforced. But the big problem we have is the people that have no idea what's possible.
Yeah. And even the people that are making it, let alone the countries themselves, you know, that want to kind of put the guardrails on in their vicinity. So funny that you say nuclear. I always make that comparison too, and I think it is comparable to nuclear power, which it does sound terrifying. And you know, in the instance, what happened? Something very like catastrophic had to happen, and then suddenly everybody puts the guardrails in.
Yeah, and then you also have the overcorrection, right? I mean, we're no longer looking at nuclear power in many parts of Europe because we have basically the damages. It's like PTSD of what happened. There's a real effect of the fact that we went through some really traumatic experience, and then that prevents us from accessing a lot of the benefits because we went through that. So, like, interesting to think through what the dynamic there.
We're now doing a little quick fire round related to what we were just talking about. So the first question is, should we slow AI down for safety or speed it up so we stay ahead? Georgia.
Good question. I'm quite a fan of this movement called slow AI. Don't know if you've seen it online.
It's like slow cooking, whatever it's slow eating.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, the AI is teaching itself. And I know, like, from a business perspective, it doesn't make any sense to stop it. But I think slowing it down wouldn't be the worst idea.
I'm not a big fan of that because I think ultimately we have the risks and the rewards, and I think the only thing that makes me really positive about this is that I think we have more good people in the world than bad people. And when you try and slow things down, the good people end up slowing down, and anyone that tries to use it for bad just doesn't respect the rules of it slowing down. So we end up disproportionately giving power to the people that would have used this for bad to begin with, because we're basically only preventing the people that would have been the balancing force to make sure that we keep it in check. So I'm not a fan of the slowdown movement for that. But
maybe we could repurpose it. Use AI less to make stakeholders money and use it more to cultivate presence.
What do you think of that?
I am very much for that. I think we live in a capitalist society where there will have to be some interesting trade-offs to figure out how to get there. No.
And I just want to add there, like one of the biggest caveats is that the biggest gains, actually this is going to be my next question for you. Where do the biggest gains from AI come at a humanity level?
At a humanity level, I think the biggest gains from AI are in personalization and contextualization, without a doubt. The ability of AI to understand you and offer you like recommendations or suggestions or whatever it might be. Like, for example, with scheduling around my cycle and my energy levels. That's just one example of the offer and the value that personalization and contextualization can give. You know, you're quite into personal development. If you'd written a book about personal development and you spent a few years writing it, why wouldn't you want an AI companion that could personalize and contextualize your theories on personal development to the reader who's had a different experience to you? So I think that's where the biggest wins are going to happen.
So I think it's disproportionately to people that have harder times. So I actually think this is a very democratizing technology. There's not been another time where whether you are Elon Musk today or me or someone who has dramatically less, like for $20 a month, you basically have access to the best models in the world. And that is a real rebalancing of what's happening. So I think where it ends up accumulating or materializing for humanity is having to do less of the things that you don't like doing.
I love that. The reason why I brought that up is the previous question around trying to move as fast as possible. I see the greatest gains as being the riskiest as well. It's when I think about the biological models that are being created that can drastically reduce drug development timelines from like 10, 15 years down to 1 year, 6 months. But then that starts to ear on the potential for, we talked about the negatives of biologics and all that, but another rabbit hole for another conversation. Is AI companionship a breakthrough for mental health or the beginning of emotional decay?
I think it's more on the side of a breakthrough for mental health. I believe that AI is a mirror and it can reflect what we put into it. And I'm also doing a lot of work around researching the idea of AI versus I am. So like using machine intelligence to help you understand your own. I think we're in a mental health crisis already, so it's not going to get any worse. Most people can't afford a therapist. I don't think an AI should ever replace a real person that's helping you, but I think it can dramatically enhance.
I'm really divided. I would actually not be able to give a definitive answer either way. I've seen both. I actually am a big proponent of AI therapists. So weirdly enough, on that end, I would think there's a lot to add. But I am scared, and I would, if I'm honest, haven't explored enough myself even what it would mean there to be human, and how do I want to be a human in terms of the communication between me and AI, and then the communication between me and other humans, and how you even value the time spent doing one or the other, and how that changes you as a human. I'm one who's naturally spending a lot of time with computers, so something I should be spending more time on, probably, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk way more about that. Like I think even just using it as an assistant to your therapy. Like I've made an AI of my therapist. I uploaded all her books that she's written, and I upload all the transcripts of our sessions, so that, but I'm spending money on her, so why don't I use AI to get the most out of it? And then I can talk to it between sessions and things like that. I think it's really valuable tool. Everything, there was a VR experiment ages ago which used VR so you could feel like you're talking to Freud, and then switch and you're talking back to yourself, based on the idea that you can always give other people advice, but you can't always take it yourself. And I think I do understand, if you don't feel comfortable talking to a human, there is this ostensibly unbiased entity that you can really talk to about how you feel, and then keep a record of it and see, oh, I felt like this when that happened, and now this happened, I feel better. That's like amazing data that we've never been able to have before of our own emotions.
I've had that said to me so many times, where people feel much more comfortable disclosing what they really feel to AI than to any human. Because that, to your point, only few people have a therapist, let alone a really good therapist, who you actually feel comfortable genuinely talking about your life to. And it is somewhat, part of it is a skill or at least like you feel comfortable being feeling exposed in a way, but people feel less exposed when it's the AI, because they don't feel judged. Like there's not a question, am I being judged based on what is coming in right now? Now there's the bias question and everything else comes through, but the judge bit seems to be a really big barrier for people to have real conversations. And that instantly falls away. I was surprised how much my wife will end up just talking to ChatGPT, talking about everything, because it's like, oh, well, it's just a computer, right? I mean, there's nothing there.
What human skill becomes more valuable, not less, in an AI-saturated world?
Without a doubt, critical thinking. I think that it's kind of ironic we're seeing a lot of the biggest universities in the world being the slowest to uptake AI, when actually this huge argument for AI is going to completely reimagine education. No longer do we have to just remember the information. It's really about what we do with it. And, everything from every day using AI, it's really important to hone your critical thinking, so you don't accept the first answer and you talk back to it and you ask for the machine to tell you how it drew certain conclusions. But also, in terms of how we just communicate and go about our lives, and also what's going to be the most hireable skill is going to be something that a machine can't do.
I would say human connection. So I actually I want to believe what you say about critical thinking, but I have yet to square in my head what happens when what I think in many cases is already the case now, which is that AI often is better at making decisions than I am, and is better at evaluating information than I am. It makes me wonder, okay, if just my brain can't be as good as the AI, then at some point, am I really better off by still making that decision or not? And I go either way, but for that reason, I'm less clear on that particular piece.
That's so interesting. I've been thinking a lot about the intersection of intuition and AI. And how can we sharpen our own intuition so that we know the best decision to make, which is something that AI can't do.
Yeah, well, the knowing there becomes interesting, right?
Yeah.
Indeed, which is that means that the knowing becomes the thing of trusting your own intuition, and then the question is, will that knowing get you into better situations or worse?
Well, you would hope, like maybe AI would give us the opportunity to sharpen our intuition so much that we really start listening to ourselves.
That could be amazing.
That's a very interesting conversation. One that I had again with Baroness Susan Greenfield on the podcast. And individuality, it's such a difficult thing to tap into now because there's just so many distractions, tech distractions, social media, whatever. Tapping into our body, our true intuition, it's like, I don't think we've ever been more disconnected from our real intuition. Oh.
Yeah. I know, like most people say the most important skill to cultivate in the age of AI is taste. I'm not sure that I totally believe that anymore, but I think it's an interesting point to make. It's the idea that, you know, if AI can come up with a million ideas a second, then it's up to us to like decide which one. And an AI can't tell you which piece of music made it cry. I think that's a somewhat dated, but I do think it's an interesting one to include in the answer.
I think that's very interesting because the I've been thinking quite a bit economically where this kind of starts to land. And so for right now, the best answer that I kind of came up with is that hospitality is one of the best sectors to think about for the next 10 years. Because what happens when people no longer have to do as much work and they have more wealth to spend in different ways, they end up wanting to spend it with other people, going through different experiences and going beyond where they are today, right? And I think that is interesting because I think taste and human connection end up fairly accurately reflecting what like hospitality would be about. Like you have an opinion and you put some experience together that is fundamentally human in one way or another, and that ends up being a thing that people will value. And so, yeah, I would take that.
To round off, guys, I want to look into your crystal balls. It's a question I always ask. By 2030, what does the world look like to you, Georgia?
What does the world look like to me in 2030? Well, my biggest prediction, I think, if we're still here, is that we're all going to have a kind of personal AI assistant. And I was on a podcast recently and the host compared it to like a daemon, you know, where we all have our little like pet. But so that AI is going to protect us. It's going to protect us from certain marketing, and the marketing is going to have to really persuade that that thing that we need it. But also, well, you know, if we are utilizing AI effectively as a cognitive prosthetic to enhance our own brains, I hate the word productivity, but I think like output and optimizing our existence in the world, we're going to be doing it with an AI assistant, which will allow us to have more in-person connection, be more present in our day-to-day lives, and understand ourselves and the people around us better.
So I think similarly, I would characterize it as everyone will have the world's best chief of staff at their side. Like there are some people like an Elon Musk or president in the US, like you have this concept of a chief of staff who is dramatically more than just doing the admin work around you, right? It's actually doing the real work. The question as to why can someone like the president of the US or, in this case, we're talking about two fairly controversial people, but look at the offices, not the people. They can do so much and still somehow spend time with family, with other people around them in some cases. Well, that's because they have really great chiefs of staff that basically do execute on what they want executed at any point and actually help move the agenda along, move those projects along while you do other things. And I think we will all end up with a dramatically capable chief of staff in our lives that allow us to do more of what we want to do whilst also achieving more of what we're trying to achieve at the same time.
A final question. What parting bit of advice would you like to give our listeners, Georgia?
I'd say get really passionate about carving out time to play. It's so important, and you need to protect that. Like I've found in my own life, as I've been traveling so much, I've been doing these talks, I haven't had the time to make the stuff that I want to, and that is the only way to learn. And it's really, and also it's the best way, because if you feel excited and you feel like something is playful, we're in an age where we have to get uncomfortable learning new stuff. We have no other choice. And I understand why so many people don't want to, but the only way we're gonna, go ahead and particularly for women, lead in a different way is if we first of all get uncomfortable learning the new skills. So I think, get comfortable being uncomfortable and like fiercely protect the time to play.
I think that's such a great Great. One, like, make it fun. Figure out something fun that that gets you to try stuff and create an environment in which you can experiment. I think that is a really important one. And I guess if I had to add to that is give AI the benefit of doubt. Figure out how you switch from a mindset of trying to imagining what AI can do and then trying that, versus what you should be at is like imagine looking at the tasks that you are currently doing or the things you're trying to achieve, and then seeing if AI could help you with it. So try to remove any preconceived notions of how you might have used technology in the past, of what you might use AI for, and go specifically maybe try and force yourself in that playing environment to use AI in ways that you would never have thought about using it. It's like specifically the things you think it can't do, check yourself on it. Try it. Give it a go. And sometimes it can't. And sometimes it'll come back and you're going to be extremely surprised.
I think get really good at asking questions too. Sometimes just being good at AI is like asking the right questions at the right time, in the right order, and being really clear about what you want. I often joke that British people are terrible prompt engineers because we are awful at being direct and asking for what we want. And so I think actually as a Brit, that's something I'm working on.
I'm Dutch, I don't have that problem.
On that note, Georgia, Joshua, thank you so much. What a diverse conversation. Such a pleasure having you both here.
Thank you very much.